New year, new quarterback. Welcome to Snap Judgments. They're brought to you by Buyers Auto. Ohio State has made the move in the transfer portal. They are bringing in former Kansas State quarterback Will Howard, and that's going to maybe create some other changes for Ohio State. So we're going to get into all of those details with Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. Big picture, Bill, are you surprised, not surprised? Where do you land on this?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Apologies for the way I sound, by the way. Not terribly surprised by it. When the season ended, Will Howard's was a name that we had heard that Ohio State might be interested in, along with Dylan Gabriel and Riley Leonard from Duke. If he ever wanted to talk to anybody other than Notre Dame, it was a little unclear to me, like as we went through bowl prep, exactly what the Cotton Bowl was going to be for Ohio State, and like, is that going to be an audition for Devin Brown? How much do you actually take from it if he plays well, if he plays poorly? And then, like, he didn't play at all because he got hurt. So it seemed like this was going to happen no matter what. But now that we're on the other side of a game where you didn't get to see really much of anything from Devin Brown, and there's just so much uncertainty around the Ohio State quarterback position heading into 2024, this is a way, I think, to get out in front of some of that. It doesn't guarantee, I think, Ohio State anything, and we can talk about the player as we go forward here. But no, not surprised that this is where Ohio State has landed.
Berm?
I'm not surprised. I thought you were going to say new year, new Q, but you went with new quarterback, and I guess that works the same. I think the interesting thing really here is that the conversation over the last few weeks, it felt like it, to me, has been centered on trying to give Devin Brown confidence to go into that Cotton Bowl and light the world on fire. And he didn't get a chance to. And I don't know if it would have made a difference or not. Obviously, the timing of this being relatively quick after the game is over would indicate that this is a move that has been in the making for at least a few weeks. But I think that it had Devin Brown had that game where he just went out and put his stamp on it, that maybe it would allow Ohio State to say, hey, you know what, Will, after all, Auburn probably is a better fit for you. In this instance, that's not the case. And I like a lot of things about Will Howard's game. I like his size. I like the way that he moves with the football. It's kind of a Ben Roethlisberger-y type of quarterback, but not quite that lumbering. But, maybe Ben when he was 22 years old, as opposed to the 35-year-old Roethlisberger that people probably have in their memories. There's a lot to like. It doesn't mean that he's the starting quarterback to be guaranteed. I think that there will be a true competition for that starting job at Ohio State. But the question now is whether or not Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz stick around, and that's going to be the next domino to fall. I personally believe that everyone will be staying in the room until the end of spring ball, at least, and seeing how things shake out there. But as we've seen over the last few days, anything can happen in college football, and this seemed inevitable. Ohio State was going to need a quarterback once Cal McCord left.
I'm not sure that I can get all the way there on saying that it's going to be a true open competition at quarterback, because I don't think that you can get a veteran one-year option out of the portal who's won a Big 12 championship and has NIL opportunities at pretty much any school that needs a quarterback without promising them the starting job. Now, maybe they didn't say that directly, and maybe it's a wink and a nudge and a nod, but I don't believe that. I don't, and I said that when the moment happened and Kyle McCord left. Hey, okay, if you didn't want to promise Kyle McCord the job, if you're going to replace him with another veteran somewhere else, that person is going to expect to be the starter, or they're not going to come join Ohio State. So that's why I'm curious about what that means for Devin Brown's decision. Lincoln Kienholz, I don't think it seems like it would impact Lincoln Kienholz and Aaron Nolan to a lesser degree, but someone with this pedigree and that level of experience, he should be able to win a job. You can have a competition, and if he's that good, he should not be worried about it anyway to beat out Devin Brown. But that's just not. I don't believe that that's the reality of handling transfer portal quarterbacks and managing your roster moving forward. So,
yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with your premise. I think that the point about Kyle McCord not being guaranteed the starting job and then to turn around and guarantee it to someone else is interesting. And I guess I'm hoping that the coaching staff wouldn't have done that, because I'm not sure that you're going to get a major upgrade over what Kyle McCord provided this last year with a guy like Will Howard. Because I mean, yeah, he's a little bit bigger. He's a little bit more mobile. He's a guy that's willing to run. Had 9 rushing touchdowns as a junior for Kansas State, almost 400 rushing yards. So he's a guy that gets out and runs. But if Ohio State doesn't ask out of their quarterback, that part of his game doesn't really matter anyway. So, he certainly can extend plays and do a few more things. But the conversation that we've had for the last month is fundamentally how different is Will Howard than Devin Brown, and I think he's a little bit bigger at 6'5" and 242 as opposed to Devin at 6'3", 220. Probably a little faster, maybe not as powerful as a runner, but I think that you look at Will Howard, Bill, and you've watched more of him and broken him down, I'm sure. Is he not just where you think Devin Brown's ceiling is? And so you're maybe you're skipping ahead in the process with Devin Brown and just replacing the name?
Yeah, you're trying to expedite things a little bit, I think. I don't think he has as strong of an arm as Devin, but he might be a touch more accurate and able to maybe make a few more throws in terms of intermediate stuff than Devin can. But
and the experience, obviously, you have.
Yeah, certainly more experience. I think Will Howard has 27 career starts, if I'm not mistaken. It was started as a true freshman in parts of every year up until this last year when he was the full-time starter, kind of for the first time. I do think that's probably the logic here with Ohio State is you think Devin Brown can be this eventually. Is he going to be there in year 3? If you think the answer to that question is no, and you don't really want to mess around with what that might look like in terms of your success in 2024, then just bring in a guy who's a more finished version of that. But the thing that's interesting to me as it pertains to the quarterback competition, it's this isn't when they brought in Justin Fields, it was a competition, but it really wasn't. But everyone knew Justin Fields was going to win because he was clearly so much better than everybody in the room. I don't know that that's true of Will Howard. So if you bring him in and then say it's a competition, well, what if he doesn't win it? then what? What if he doesn't look better than Devin Brown or Lincoln Keenholz in spring practice? So that could complicate things. So I think I'm probably with you, Austin, that if it's not a guarantee or whatever, everyone knows the score here, Will Howard's coming here to be the starting quarterback. Because I don't know if you're Ryan Day, I don't know if you want to live in a world where Lincoln Keenholz and Devin Brown are looking at themselves as I'm better than this guy. What are we doing here?
When I think the other factor in that is having those conversations with Devin Brown and Lincoln Keenholz, because if I'm correct about this, and you're basically telling Will Howard you are coming here to be the starting quarterback, lead Ohio State to a Big Ten championship and enhance your draft stock, which you don't have to come back to school if you don't want to. This is a super senior situation for Will Howard, I believe. So
he was in the class of 2020,
yeah.
So this would be his 5th year. Yeah.
The story that was written in Manhattan, Kansas about his exit used that term. So I'm taking their word for it that they know what they're talking about with his career.
Yeah, because he never redshirted. So
yeah, and he played 4 seasons, right? So I mean that's if that is correct, then Ryan Day is making this move, knowing and accepting that the possible loss of Devin Brown is on the table, right? There's just no other way to say that. And that, I don't think that can come down to, and it wouldn't be fair to say that that's based on the first quarter of the Cotton Bowl, when I think he had to still be carrying some element of that high ankle sprain, and he hadn't played in a game in half of the season. That's 3 injuries if we're going to count it as a new one, dating back to the spring game. But he had the full month of practice, and a lot of the reviews that were coming from the team were positive for that. But if Ohio State was remaining in touch with Will Howard and considering their options, they couldn't have been, to me, on the outside, as good as what Ryan Day was hoping for in terms of building a championship contender for next year. So, I could certainly be off base about all of that, but I just don't see how there's a world where you can take a 1-year guy in this situation, expect him to compete with Devin Brown, or for Devin Brown to just, maintain that he's still going to burn those boats and be totally on board with all this. I think it's the same is true that if you tell Kyle McCord you're not promising the starting job, that you have to be okay losing him. If you take Will Howard, then that means you also have to be okay losing Devin Brown.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any other way around that discussion. I think it's the only thing that makes logical sense. And I'm curious from both of your perspectives, do you believe that had Ryan Day not lost 3 in a row to Michigan and not lost the last 2 bowl games, that you could go into 2024 with a little less certainty at quarterback and be okay with it, knowing that the playoffs expanding and all that? I wonder like how much of this decision is a result of Ryan Day feeling a pressure that he has to win next year or his job is likely over at Ohio State. And I personally think that has to drive these sort of decisions, because you have recruited Devin Brown, you have developed him for 2 years. You felt for the last month like, hey, he's making strides, things are improving, he's showing us what he can be, and now you have to tell yourself, but I have to be okay with losing him, because if I don't win the Big Ten next year, my job might not be my job anymore.
I think that's why the choice of Will Howard is a little bit surprising to me, because this, as Bill mentioned off the top, they wanted to be involved with Dylan Gabriel. They didn't get a chance. They didn't give him a visit. They had targeted some interest or had some level of interest in Riley Leonard. Couldn't get him to not stick with what appeared to be a foregone conclusion at Notre Dame. And I know that Bill and I had conversations previously in the month with you, Berm. It's like you said, Will Howard is going to be potentially in this trifecta at the top of guys that Ryan Day, Ohio State, Mark Pantoni believe are good enough to get the job done. And I said, I don't know. I'm not sure that I've seen that level, like that Will Howard is a instant fix for that. And so that's the surprise for me. Certainly he can get into March and April and we'll see something that's different. Maybe this system, maybe working with Ryan Day, maybe throwing to, Emeka Ibuka if he does wind up sticking around, and Carnell Tate and Brandon Ennis show something that's very different from Will Howard than what he would have been able to show in Kansas State's offense. But to me, he seemed like, middling is too harsh of a word. He didn't look like a game-changing first-round NFL draft pick to me. And so it does seem like there's a little bit of that. I'm not going to, you didn't say desperation, but urgency to go out and make this kind of move because of those results. I don't know how it's going to turn out, to be quite honest with you. I don't know it. I don't look at it as some absolute slam dunk decision the way that Justin Fields was. And that's an obvious statement as well. But that's, if you were trying to make something, microwave some results at quarterback, I am a bit surprised that this is the route that they're going.
I agree with that, but I guess I would say in defense of Will Howard, like I don't know that anyone would have kind of been a satisfactory addition there if you're like looking for that ready-made slam dunk. Like Dylan Gabriel was very experienced and productive, but like he has limitations, and Riley Leonard is an incredible athlete but needs a ton of polish as a passer, and Will Howard needs some polish as well. Like the one guy that I thought was a level above all of them was Michael Pratt at Tulane, but he never entered the portal, and it sounds like he's already filed his paperwork to go to the NFL. So he's just going to go get drafted because he doesn't need the work that these other guys need to get drafted. So like there's a reason all these guys are transferring to go to a program for a fifth year, because they're not good enough to go to the NFL yet. But I think if you're Ohio State, I think you're just like assessing traits, right? And then Will Howard certainly has some to like. And then I think you look at a Michael Penix or a Bo Nix and say to yourself, well, like this guy was like okay at his previous school, but then we surrounded him with tremendous talent, and then he became something more than that, and like Heisman Trophy candidates. And I don't think that's flawed logic on Ohio State's part if they think they can elevate a quarterback the same way with the talent that they have on hand at receiver and at running back. If Trevion Henderson comes back, and maybe you do a little work on the offensive line to shore that up to be better than it was this year. But the weapons are there to make a quarterback better than he has been. So Will Howard would not have been my first choice, but I also would be lying if I said I was like totally enamored with anybody who was available in the transfer portal once it was pretty clear that Michael Pratt wasn't going to be there.
Yeah, the only guy that I look at in the as around the country who I'm like, oh, that guy would be the one, to me would be like the dude at Arizona, right? Like his name, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it.
Noah Fafita.
Yeah, him. Like he's exciting. Like I like his game, but Will Howard won a conference championship at Kansas State. Mm-hmm. And so, as you said earlier, like there are things that he's done where you can look at it and you look at the size and you look at the ability to move and to create plays and extend plays. Like I think there's a lot of reasons you look at that and you say, well, if we give him, Emeka Ibuka and Carnell Tate and Brandon Ennis and Jeremiah Smith and Mylan Graham and then all of a sudden he's playing with weapons around him that he's never had in his life. I mean, this is a kid who was a 3-star prospect coming out of Downingtown, PA, a big West Philly guy like Bill. So there's a lot of things that you have to like about it. Bill's voice is so bad right now that I can just take barbs, and I know he's not going to waste. He's not going to waste his breath.
This is not fair. Holy
Trying
cow!
to strike back. So I'm just going to fire away, Commander. The reality is this kid has a lot of the things you like, and I do, but I keep going back to the fact that I think it's just trying to skip ahead in the process of where you think Devin Brown is going to go while you develop Lincoln Kienholz for another year physically. I think Lincoln Kienholz deserves a world of credit for how he played against Missouri in the Cotton Bowl, all things considered. But the biggest thing for him is he needs to gain 25 pounds so he can take what the Big Ten is going to throw at him when he's able to play, behind an offensive line that isn't Swiss cheese like it was on Friday. And then you have Aaron Nolan coming in. He's clearly not, you shouldn't be expected to be the starting quarterback as a freshman. This is just a skip ahead. And I know that there's going to be people who will complain about it. And this is where I get confused because folks for the last year have been telling me they want Ryan Day and the Ohio State coaches to be more cutthroat and be more aggressive. And then when they are aggressive, there will no doubt be folks complaining that they should have given Devin Brown a chance to win the job outright. And I just don't know how you can have things both ways. So, but again, ultimately it comes down to this is Ryan Day's final shot to right the ship. And if this is the guy that for the last month we've heard, this is the guy. And also Lincoln Riley wanted Will Howard pretty bad. And that is telling to me as well. So I think you have to look at it and say, hey, if you have a new starting quarterback right now, it's because two of the best quarterback developers in the country wanted him and they both wanted Will Howard. So that to me is like a good sign.
Yeah. If I can quickly play devil's advocate, I would also say that Will Howard is the guy that Kansas State was so uncertain of last year that they went and recruited Adrian Martinez to play ahead of him. So right. He has not always, and he had a really good close to this season. Will Howard did, and he won a Big 12 championship, as you guys have said. There's been some really erratic play, high turnover rates, like high turnover worthy throws. Like there's a lot of stuff that he needs to get better at as a passer, which is why he's coming to a place like Ohio State, because he thinks that's the place they can get him over some of that stuff and make him.
Ain't that the rub though? Like that's been the argument, the conversation for the last month. There isn't Justin Fields in the portal, so
no. There's not. There's guys you could have like pursued and hoped they became Justin Fields, like a Dante Moore, but then he'd be the only quarterback in your room. So yeah, that was never really on the table.
Well, Ohio State's made its pick from that table, and it is going to be Will Howard to Ohio State. Looks like he will be in line to be the next starting quarterback, but that's a conversation again for another day. This is the day one start of that Snap Judgments version, brought to you by Buyers Auto for that decision. Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham, appreciate their insights on this. I am Austin Ward, and we'll talk to you later.